The sound of metal crushing would jolted me awake at 6:17 a.m. I rushed to my bedroom window and froze in horror. Two massive yellow bulldozers were smashing through my front gate, followed by men in matching uniforms and a gleaming black SUV. The president of an HOA I didn't even belong to stood pointing at my home, shouting orders as if he owned my land. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and made 2 calls, first to the sheriff then to my former Marine Squad leader, Mike. What happened next would change not just my life, but how HOAs operate across the entire state. Before I tell you this unbelievable but true story, drop a comment letting me know which country you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible real-life stories about standing up to corruption and abuse of power. 3 months before the bulldozers arrived, I was living my dream. After 15 years of saving every penny from my job as a hospital administrator, I had finally purchased 5 acres of land with a modest farmhouse that had been in the Sullivan family for generations. Located just outside city limits, the property was perfect. No restrictions, no neighbors telling me what color to paint my mailbox, and most importantly, no HOA. The land wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The old barn needed work and the house required updates, but that was the point. I wanted a project, something to make my own. My grandfather had been a carpenter, and I'd learned enough from him to handle most repairs. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The property bordered Oak Ridge Estates, an upscale housing development where homes started at $800,000. A small creek and a line of mature oak trees separated my land from their manicured lawns. I rarely interacted with the residents there, and that suited me just fine. That peaceful arrangement ended on a Tuesday morning when a white envelope appeared on my front door. No postage, no knock, just an official-looking letter sealed with a gold-embossed sticker that read Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. I opened it, confused about why I'd received anything from them. The letter inside made my stomach drop. Notice of violation. Your property has been incorporated into Oak Ridge Estates through Municipal Boundary Adjustment #CR472. You are in violation of 14 community standards including unapproved structures, aesthetic noncompliance, and prohibited agricultural activity. Fine, $8,750. Compliance deadline, 30 days. At the bottom was the signature of Charles Wellington, HOA president, along with a phone number. I called immediately. Mr. Wellington's office, answered a crisp female voice. This is Emma Richards. I received a violation notice for my property on Old Mill Road, but there must be a mistake. I'm not part of Oak Ridge Estates. One moment, please. The line went silent for nearly a minute before she returned. Mr. Wellington can see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. to discuss your violations. But I'm not part of any HOA, I insisted. There's been a mistake. Municipal Adjustment #CR472 incorporated outlying properties into Oak Ridge jurisdiction last month. The meeting will explain your options. Would you prefer a different time? Stunned, I agreed to the meeting, then hung up and immediately called the county recorder's office. The clerk sounded tired when I explained my situation. You're the 4th call this week about boundary adjustments, she sighed. Let me check your parcel number. After a few clicks, she confirmed what I already knew. Your property is not within any HOA jurisdiction. There is no record of a municipal adjustment affecting your parcel. So this violation notice is fraudulent? I asked. I can't legally call it that, she replied carefully, but I'd recommend bringing your deed to the meeting and recording any conversation. Charles Wellington's office occupied the top floor of a glass building downtown. His receptionist, the same clipped voice from the phone, directed me to a leather chair facing an imposing desk. Wellington himself entered moments later, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Ms. Richards, he said without offering his hand. I understand you have questions about your violation notice. I placed my property deed on his desk. I have documentation showing my land is not part of Oak Ridge Estates or any HOA. Wellington barely glanced at the papers. That's outdated. Municipal Adjustment #CR472 incorporated boundary properties for infrastructure improvements. Your cooperation would be appreciated. I checked with the county recorder yesterday. No such adjustment exists. A flash of annoyance crossed his face before he regained his composure. There's often a delay in county records. However, I can make this simple for you. He slid a document across the desk. This is an offer to purchase your property at fair market value. Sign today and all violations disappear. I looked at the offer, $220,000. My property was worth at least twice that amount. This is absurd, I said, standing up. My land isn't for sale, and it's not under your jurisdiction. Wellington's smile vanished. Ms. Richards' Oak Ridge Estates is expanding. The new phase requires your parcel. You can sell willingly at this price, or we can make ownership so problematic that you'll beg us to take it off your hands. Are you threatening me? I'm offering a business solution, he replied coldly. Ask Angela Miller what happens when people refuse reasonable offers. Who is Angela Miller? She owned the farmhouse on Riverdale Road. Similar situation. Similar stubbornness. She sold for much less eventually, after the fines, legal fees and property damage became too much to bear. I gathered my documents, my hands shaking with anger. Stay off my property, Mr. Wellington. As I reached the door, he called after me, the bulldozers are scheduled for compliance enforcement on your barn next Monday at 6 a.m. It doesn't meet our architectural standards. I drove straight to the sheriff's office, where Deputy Garcia listened to my story with growing concern. He reviewed the violation notice and made copies for their files. Unfortunately, this falls into a gray area between civil and criminal, he explained. If they trespass, call us immediately. But these fake incorporation schemes are becoming common. HOAs know the system is slow to respond. So I just wait for them to destroy my property? He handed me his card. Call the second anyone steps foot on your land without permission. Document everything. And maybe talk to Marcus Dawson at the county commissioner's office. He's been tracking these cases. Marcus Dawson, a harried-looking man with coffee stains on his tie, met me that same afternoon. Classic land grab, he said after reviewing my documents. Wellington Construction, owned by Charles Wellington's son, just secured permits for a luxury condo development. They need adjacent properties. But why target me? There's undeveloped land all around Oak Ridge. Your parcel is the access point to the creek, he explained, pulling up a map on his computer. See this blue line? Water access increases property values by 30%. Without your land, their development loses its centerpiece. What can I do? Fight legally and publicly. I've seen 6 similar cases this year alone. The HOAs back down when exposed. He handed me a business card for Patricia Chin, attorney at law. She specializes in property rights. Tell her I sent you. Patricia confirmed my worst fears. They're banking on intimidation working before legal remedies can catch up. File a restraining order immediately, but also prepare for them to ignore it. Ignore a court order? They'll claim miscommunication or clerical error, pay a small fine and continue. Meanwhile, if they damage your property, your only recourse is civil court, which takes months. So I just watch them bulldoze my home? She leaned forward. Document everything. Get security cameras. And find allies, other victims, neighbors who value property rights. These bullies count on isolating their targets. With 4 days until the threatened bulldozer appearance, I worked frantically to protect my property. I installed security cameras at every corner, reinforced my gate with metal posts, and placed no trespassing signs every 20 feet along my perimeter. Patricia filed an emergency restraining order against Oak Ridge Estates HOA, Wellington personally, and any agents acting on their behalf. The judge granted it, but warned that enforcement might be challenging without law enforcement present. Then I remembered Wellington's words, ask Angela Miller. It took several calls but I finally located her, now living in an apartment across town. They destroyed me, she said when I explained my situation. Her voice sounded hollow, defeated. First came the violations. Then strange accidents, broken windows, cut water lines. When I still wouldn't sell, someone poisoned my garden. Police said there wasn't enough evidence to pursue charges. How did they finally get your land? They didn't need to bulldoze my house, she explained bitterly. They just made life unbearable until I gave up. I sold for 40% of market value just to escape. Wellington's son broke ground on new condos the very next day. Her story chilled me to the bone but also hardened my resolve. That night I posted in the county community forum, urgent, Oak Ridge Estates HOA threatening to bulldoze private property. Meeting at my house tomorrow for anyone who's experienced similar intimidation. I expected perhaps 5 or 6 people. 27 showed up. They came from across the county, people who had fought similar battles against aggressive HOAs. Some had won, many had lost, all were angry. Among them was Mike Collins, a former Marine who had served with my late brother in Afghanistan. Your brother saved my life in Helmand Province, Mike said. When I saw your post I knew I had to help. And I'm not coming alone. Sunday night I barely slept. At 5 a.m., I gave up trying and made coffee, checking and rechecking my security camera feeds. Patricia had coached me on what to say and do when Wellington's crew arrived. The sheriff promised to send deputies, but warned they might be delayed by shift change. At 5:45 a.m., headlights appeared on the road leading to my property. Not just a few, a convoy. My heart pounded as I counted. 2 bulldozers, 3 pickup trucks and Wellington's black SUV. I called the sheriff's emergency line. They're here. Multiple vehicles approaching my property with construction equipment. Units are dispatched, the dispatcher assured me. 15 minutes. 15 minutes too late, I thought, watching the lead bulldozer approach my gate. I made my second call to Mike. He answered immediately, "We see them. Hold tight." Before I could ask what he meant, the bulldozer crashed through my reinforced gate, splintering wood and bending metal. Security lights flooded the area as my cameras recorded everything. Wellington emerged from his SUV, pointing toward my barn while workers unloaded equipment from the trucks. I stepped onto my front porch, phone recording video, restraining order in hand. "This is private property. You are trespassing. I have a court order prohibiting this action." Wellington barely glanced my way. "Proceed as planned," he instructed the bulldozer operator. "Remove the non-compliant structure." The massive machine rumbled toward my barn, its metal blade gleaming in the early morning light. I stood my ground, continuing to record while shouting legal warnings that seemed increasingly futile. That's when we all heard it, the unmistakable sound of multiple engines approaching fast. Not police cruisers, but a wall of headlights coming down the road from the opposite direction. 7 pickup trucks roared onto my property, forming a blockade between the bulldozers and my barn. From each vehicle emerged men and women in work clothes, many wearing caps or shirts identifying their military branches. Mike led them, striding purposefully toward Wellington. "Morning," Mike said pleasantly, though his expression was anything but friendly. "Looks like you folks are trespassing." Wellington's face contorted with rage. "This is a legal HOA enforcement action. Remove yourselves immediately." "Interesting," Mike replied, "because I just got off the phone with Sheriff Ramirez. He says there's no legal HOA jurisdiction here." He gestured to the people lined up behind him. "We're all homeowners from across the county. Some of us are veterans who don't appreciate seeing American property rights violated." Wellington pointed to the bulldozer operator. "Continue with demolition." The operator glanced nervously between Wellington and the 30-plus witnesses now filming with their phones. He cut the engine. "Not getting involved in anything illegal, sir." The second bulldozer operator followed suit, powering down and climbing out of the cab. Wellington's face turned purple. He stormed toward his SUV, shouting into his phone about insubordination and contract violations. That's when the sheriff's cruisers finally arrived, 3 of them lights flashing. Sheriff Ramirez approached, taking in the scene with a practiced eye. "Mr. Wellington," he said, "I believe my office contacted you regarding a restraining order prohibiting you from entering this property." "This is HOA enforcement," Wellington insisted, waving a document. "Municipal adjustment." "Doesn't exist," the sheriff finished. "We checked thoroughly after Ms. Richards filed her complaint." He turned to his deputies. "I want statements from everyone. Document the damage to the gate." He faced Wellington again. "Your vehicles are impounded as evidence of trespassing. Your people can call for rides or accept transportation to the station for questioning." Wellington's arrogance finally cracked. "This is outrageous. I'll have your badge." Sheriff Ramirez remained unimpressed. "You'll be receiving a summons for criminal trespassing, destruction of private property, and violating a court order. I suggest you call your attorney." As Wellington was escorted to a cruiser, I noticed a woman with a professional camera filming everything from the road. Mike nodded toward her. "Local news. They're very interested in HOA overreach stories lately." For the first time that morning I smiled. The next few weeks brought developments I never could have imagined. Wellington was charged with multiple offenses, including criminal trespassing, destruction of property, falsifying documents, and attempted fraud. His son's construction company lost its permits pending investigation. More shocking were the revelations that emerged during the investigation. Angela Miller wasn't the only victim. Wellington and his son had systematically targeted at least 14 properties over 3 years, using fabricated HOA authority to intimidate owners into selling below market value. Most disturbing was the discovery of a county clerk who had been falsifying records in exchange for bribes. The entire scheme unraveled when investigators found spreadsheets detailing which officials had been paid for which favors. The local news ran a 3-part special titled HOAs, Protection or Predation, featuring my story prominently. Patricia Chin represented not just me but 8 other property owners in a class action lawsuit against Wellington, his son, and the Oak Ridge Estates HOA board members who had known about the scheme. Mike and his veteran friends formalized their impromptu defense force into the Property Rights Protection Network, offering support to homeowners facing similar intimidation. They established a 24-hour hotline and provided free security assessments for vulnerable property owners. 3 months after the bulldozer incident, the first hearings in Wellington's criminal case began. The courtroom was packed with his victims, media, and concerned citizens. His attorney tried desperately to portray the scheme as mere aggressive business tactics, but the evidence was overwhelming. My client believed he was acting within his authority, the lawyer claimed. Judge Watkins removed her glasses. Mr. Wellington created fraudulent documents, bribed officials, and sent bulldozers onto private property. Those actions demonstrate clear knowledge of wrongdoing. Wellington ultimately accepted a plea deal that included restitution to all affected property owners, substantial fines, and a 5-year prison sentence. His son received 3 years for his role in the development scheme. The corrupted county clerk turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. The Oak Ridge Estates HOA underwent a complete restructuring after homeowners revolted against the board that had enabled Wellington's abuse of power. The new board, led by a retired judge, adopted transparent practices and strict limitations on enforcement actions. Most meaningful to me personally was the state legislature's response. 6 months after the incident, they passed the Homeowner Protection Act, which established clear boundaries for HOA authority, created an oversight commission to investigate abuses, and implemented severe penalties for fraudulent incorporation schemes. 1 year after Wellington's bulldozers crashed through my gate, I hosted a gathering on my property. Mike and his veteran network were there, along with Patricia, Angela Miller, Sheriff Ramirez, and dozens of community members who had supported the fight for justice. We stood in front of my barn, now renovated with help from Mike's team, raising glasses to property rights and community strength. The old structure had been transformed into a meeting space where homeowners could learn about their rights and find resources to fight overreach. To Emma, Mike toasted, who stood her ground when others might have given up. I shook my head. To all of us, I corrected. What happened here wasn't about one property, it was about what happens when good people refuse to be intimidated. Angela Miller, who had used her settlement money to purchase a new home far from any HOA, smiled for the first time since I'd met her. They never expected us to fight back together. Sheriff Ramirez added, Wellington's mistake was thinking that laws and boundaries don't matter. But in this community they do. As sunset painted the sky above my land, secure and protected, I reflected on how close I'd come to losing everything. Not just the property, but the principle that a person's home is their sanctuary, not a target for the powerful and greedy. The creek that Wellington had coveted still flowed peacefully along my property line. The new fence, stronger than before, stood as a boundary not just against trespassers but against the idea that money could override rights. I never intended to become an activist, but sometimes life chooses your path. The Homeowner Advocacy Center now operates from my renovated barn, helping people navigate legitimate HOA relationships while fighting predatory practices. What Wellington tried to destroy has become a beacon for property rights across the state. As my guests departed that evening, Mike lingered behind. Your brother would be proud, he said quietly. He always talked about fighting for what matters. I nodded, looking over the property that had nearly been stolen from me. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought in war zones. But they're still won by people willing to stand together, Mike finished. The following week, I installed a new sign at my repaired front gate. It reads simply, private property, protected by community, defended by veterans, respected by law. The bulldozers never returned. Thank you for watching this incredible true story of standing up against corruption and abuse of power. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share this video with anyone dealing with HOA nightmares. Drop a comment letting me know what you thought and which country you're watching from. Your support helps bring these important stories to light.